So let's go ahead and get into it. We are back and we have some breaking news. YNW Bortlen just took the deal of a lifetime. And guys, I'm not putting this lightly. Okay, we started looking at this when we first heard the plea deal was going to come out, right? And YNW Bortlen was looking at this plea deal. He was facing a maximum of 75 years. That's on one count. And then not one, not two, not three, not four, but five. I think it might have even been six multiple life sentences he was looking at facing. And it was bad. Then we heard the news. This plea deal came out. The state was going to offer him, I think at the time it was 16 years and possibly some probation. We weren't sure about the details. Come to find out, the deal actually turned out to be 10 years plus 6 years of probation, right? And which is amazing. If you're looking at facing this much time and then you go down to 10 years plus a little bit of time on probation. I mean, this man's going to have the rest of his life to live. As soon as I heard that, I said, bro, y'all could go check the receipts. You better take this deal. I have never seen a plea deal like this offered since we've been covering this type of content here on the channel. And it's been a while. So we're going to get into the actual details of this plea deal. We're going to hear from Judge Fiend what actually happened. And I even mentioned, if y'all saw over on X, I posted a clip from this hearing where Judge Fiend said, hey, listen, I don't know how your attorney got this deal, but this is one of the greatest deals I've ever seen. Absolutely amazing. So before we get into the actual hearing, I want you guys to hear from Bradford Cohen because he had something to say about YNW Bortlen taking this deal and how that could possibly affect YNW Melly. Let's see what we have to say.
All right, let's talk YNW Melly and YNW Bortlen. He is
greatest deal I've
now
ever seen.
Doing the triple Lindy. For those youngsters that don't know what the triple Lindy is, it is when you do several flips off a high dive, and he will be flipping. He is going to be tell-all about anything he knows about the double murder case, and they will know if he's telling the truth or telling a lie when he gives his full quote-unquote confession as to what happened that evening. And that's what happens. A lot of times where guys are in the prison for 4 or 5 years awaiting trial and looking at a life sentence, and they're offered 10 years where they'll be home probably in another 3 years that he'll serve, he decides to flip and become a cheese eater. And that's what happens a lot of times on these cases. And I was expecting it to happen a lot sooner than it did. He held out for quite some time. But long story short is it looks like he's going to flip. And it makes the case on YNW Melly, depending on what he says, which I anticipate he'll say that YNW Melly is responsible. But depending on what he says, it will make the YNW Melly case a lot more difficult to try. But still not impossible. I've had cases where there were flipping.
Yes, and cheese eater, he did mean rat. That's what he meant. Shout out to Bradford Cohen.
Witnesses where, I had a federal case with several flipping witnesses where we still got a not guilty. And it's possible to still get a not guilty in this case. Obviously, it's going to make it a lot more difficult. He has an excellent lawyer, by the way, Fred Haddad, who's a friend of mine, and I know Fred would have done a very good job for him at trial, but ultimately it is an individual's decision whether or not to become Chuck E. Cheese. And in this case, he has become Chuck E. Cheese. Is Chuck E. Cheese a mouse or a rat? I'm not sure.
Dang,
but long story short is he will be flipping, and it's going to make the case against YNW Melly a lot more difficult to win.
That's crazy that this attorney is out here calling this man a rat. But it's tough because that's what's looking like is going to have to happen and is a major part of this deal for YNW Bortlen. Now, how do y'all think Melly is feeling about this? I want you to let me know in the comments and in the chat because this can't feel good. Also, think about it. It could go one of two ways. Now, would he be violating his plea deal if he gets on the stand and he gives a recollection of what happened that doesn't necessarily line up with what the state wants to seize? Not always. We would have to see the specific deal, right? He can't get up on the stand and lie. Obviously, he would not only be violating the plea deal, but he would be violating the court rules, right? But Melly has to be looking at this and saying, man, I might need to look at a plea deal too. If Melly's offered a plea deal, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the deal that Bortlen got. Also, I have to point out his amazing attorney, and let's give this man a round of applause. Shout out to Fred Haddad. As was mentioned earlier, he had this to say about people who are coming out and saying that YNW Bortlen is a rat. I don't know that yet, and I'm not comfortable calling him a rat. I already had to apologize to Gunna for the plea that he took, and initially I said Gunna was a Chuck E. Cheese, as our guy Bradford Cohen said, and it turned out not to be the case, in my opinion, with Gunna. So we're going to see how this plays out. Wait till he gets on the stand. But YNW Bortlen's attorney, Fred Haddad, addressed social media assumptions that Bortlen is a snitch after accepting today's plea deal. What did he have to say? He said, "I don't represent snitches." What? And he put it as, I'm not going to disrespect Bortlen by saying his real name. So I'll just say Bortlen Henry is not a snitch, and he will not be cooperating or testifying in YNW Melly's trial.
Stop the cap.
Anyone who claims differently has not seen the plea and has no idea what they're talking about. Okay, shout out to Fred, but Fred, I am not buying this. There is no way in the world that the state would offer YNW Bortlen the greatest plea deal I have ever seen since I've been covering these trials, which isn't that long, but it's been a while, and not require him to testify. It just doesn't make any sense. So there's been a lot of reporting this. I know Bradford, he gives some great insights, but he doesn't always do his research on these cases. You can tell a lot of times Bradford, he looks at some of the things that are being said on social media and reacts to it. So we still have to wait and see what actually is going on with this plea deal, what was agreed to, what was said, before we decide to say, is he a snitch or not? Because just taking a plea deal on its own doesn't make you a snitch, in my opinion. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to get into the hearing in the next video. I want y'all to let me know what you think about this before we get into the hearing in the comments and in the chat. From what you're seeing so far, is taking a plea deal on YNW Bortlen's part automatically making him a snitch? Do you want to wait and see what's going to be said in court? Do you have to see what was in the plea deal? And do you think this deal was just, it was too good to pass up considering what he was facing? I want to know what y'all think in the comments and in the chat. And we're going to get into the hearing here in the next video. Make sure y'all go and check it out. Wow. What a mess, man.